How YouTube Desperados? I'm Sean Stoger, and this is Crazy Native Philosophy. You have no idea how many times I have redone this video for you. It has truly been a labor of love. And with that, today's video is called Standing Strong, Identity for the Next Generation. So in my last video, I discussed that my primary motivation, come on buddy. In my last video, I discussed that my primary motivation for making this entire channel was the next generation. And that is also my primary motivation for this entire video. So I'm going to share with you everything that I wish someone had told me when I was in my teens and early 20s. Although this is aimed primarily at young natives, you non-natives will find stuff of great value here as well. Personally, I believe I'm a great person to discuss today's topic. I've worked with the 12 tribes of my state for almost 20 years as a tribal liaison, and I've had to fight every single day for every scrap of identity, culture, language, and connection I could get. I have faced the challenges of being mixed, disconnected, and light-skinned. And believe me, every single room I've ever walked into, I've had to prove I am, well, number one, native, and number two, how native I am. So I know firsthand the challenges faced by a native person growing up in mainstream America that doesn't look like a Hollywood Indian. So I believe this makes me an ideal person to discuss today's topic. Now, when I got out of the Army the first time, I was in college in my early 20s, and I struggled with identity issues. But surprisingly, so did everyone else I knew, and even the natives that were born and raised on local reservations. So for all of you next generation out there, you are not abnormal or alone. Everyone goes through this. And even when your peers look like they got their stuff completely together, and they are walking around like they are the most native that ever natived, they totally don't, and they totally aren't. They are struggling too. Unfortunately, no one can give you the direct answers on how to feel good about your own native identity. But by the end of today's video, I can guarantee that I will give you the absolute master key to standing strong with a great one, and that is a promise. And if you are a non-native, I can guarantee that if you follow the advice I'm about to give you, your life will be nothing less than magical. Now, I know this sounds like your typical YouTube hyped up BS, but if you hang to the end of this video, I promise it'll be worth it. I'm not BSing you here, just hang out. So I've literally watched tons of videos on this topic. And I have thought about it and read this video I don't know how many times. I have prayed daily and I have smudged for months. All because I wanted to get this right for you. To me, it was that important. Now, Dr. Anton Schroer has an excellent video on indigeneity. And he identifies 5 possible categories that may be used by anyone to help define a native identity. And he has got a great channel out there, a great YouTube channel. So I highly recommend his stuff. Now, his 5 categories are, number 1, a political definition, which basically means are you enrolled or are you not? Next would be a biological definition, or how much DNA is in your body. Third is a linguistic definition, or do you speak your language or not? Or how much of your language do you speak? Next is a cultural definition. Do you practice your traditional ways? Or how much of those ways do you practice? And last is a social acceptance definition. Or, are you accepted by your tribe or the native people in your community around you? So I think his breakdown is both brilliant and insightful. But the crazy native philosopher inside me asks why. Why must Native people prove ourselves to anyone? And who do we have to prove it to? So consider this for a moment. Why are Native Americans the only ethnicity with so many requirements or expectations? Like on a more street level, it seems like we must look a certain way and we must dress a certain way and we must speak or sound a certain way. We must carry a plastic ID card to prove we are who we say we are. We must speak our language flawlessly since birth. We must all be medicine men or medicine women. We must all be able to live off the land for an entire year with a stone knife that we made ourselves. We must know every animal as if it was our blood relative. We must be able to identify every plant and forage and make medicine from it. And when some non-native asks us a question about Indian country, we need to know everything about all 500 plus tribes and their culture and their history. No other ethnicity has wardrobe and appearance requirements or documentation requirements or body of knowledge requirements. And yet, as Native people, if we don't fit these requirements, we often feel bad about ourselves. Why are Native Americans the only people that have to prove it? More importantly, why do we feel the need to prove who we are? I would argue by maintaining this need to prove ourselves to everyone around us, and especially to ourselves, it keeps us in a state of perpetual doubt and weakness. We cannot be strong as a people or as sovereign individuals if we are constantly questioning and doubting ourselves and everybody else. How can we ever unite if I am always feeling like an imposter and always looking at that other guy and thinking, he's not a real Indian, or I'm more Native than that guy? As long as you question your own identity, young ones can never stand strong. But the day that you stop is the day that you will. And the day you stop judging others is the day the sacred hoop of Indian country will truly start to heal. Now let's look at Dr. Anton Truer's categories as it applies to actual people. So I'm going to give you two examples of natives that I've personally known. Now the first one is 100% native from two separate tribes. He's very dark-skinned, classically looking native. He even has a very native last name. And he's even been on TV as a native actor. But he knew nothing about his traditional ways. In fact, when he had traditional problems, any kind of problems with anything, he would run to me and ask me questions. Back then, he was also pretty self-absorbed. So harsh critics in Indian country might call him an apple, which is a pretty bad term. The only people that he hung out with were a small group of Caucasian people and off-the-boat Europeans. So in summary, using Dr. Anton Truer's categories, he would be strong on the political and biological definitions, but he would be weak on the linguistic, cultural, and social acceptance definitions. Now, in all fairness, over the years, I've seen this guy grow. I've seen him embrace traditions and become more considerate of others and gain honor by serving Native people. So I'm very proud of that guy. Now, the second guy is Enrolled Cherokee. Now, I don't know a lot about the Cherokee Nation, and this is all secondhand information to me, but I've heard from other people that there was a time you could just walk into Cherokee offices and say you were Cherokee and you could be enrolled. I don't know if that's true or not, but my friend or this person was Enrolled Cherokee. He also had blonde hair, hazel eyes, and very pale skin. He did have very classical native facial features. So if he got a tan, maybe dyed his hair or put on a wig, he could be on TV too, right? He used to go to lots of ceremonies. He speaks his language, and he lives a very traditional life. He also gives back to his tribe by He's written and published several books on Cherokee history, culture, and traditions. On top of all this, he has an extremely wicked native sense of humor. He was also loved by every native community he goes into. People love him, and including traditional elders and medicine men. So in summary, using Dr. Anton Trumer's categories, he's weak on political and biological definitions, but extremely strong on linguistic, cultural, and social acceptance. So of these two, who is native? Now, as Americans, we have been socially conditioned to think and even ask the stupid question, who is more native? Which in my mind is disgusting. I assert that both of these men are native and equally so, just in different ways. Now, I chose these two because they represent extremes on the scale, and the chances is that you are somewhere in between these two. But the way the world works is when this dark-skinned guy walks into a room, he's immediately accepted as native. And if you throw on some native bling, and a ribbon shirt and one of those big beaded medallions that everyone wears these days, forget about it. Done, right? You probably get a TV contract right there. But as soon as that guy opens his mouth, his points start dropping, right? Now, when the blonde-haired native walks into a room, he immediately has to prove himself or he's mistaken as white. And then when he tells people he's Cherokee, now he even has to scale a Mount Everest to prove himself. So, but as soon as he starts talking, people see the way he conducts himself, he clearly identifies himself, or he's clearly identified as a native person. And after people even get to know him, many people say that he's very traditional. So to believe or act like racism doesn't exist is just stupidity. If you are dark-skinned, there will be people who hate you and profile you, and even worse, just because of your skin pigmentation. If you are light-skinned, you will have to prove yourself every time you walk into a room. You could literally dive in front of Crazy Horse and take the bayonet for him, and some natives and non-natives will always see you as white. Some natives and non-natives will always see you as native. And some natives and some non-natives will always see you as something in between. No matter where you fall on this spectrum, you cannot help how you were born. And you cannot help how the outside world will see you and react to you. So what are you going to do? Are you going to spend the rest of your life running around the world trying to make everyone see you a certain way? One, that's a waste of your life, and two, it's not going to work anyway. So the best advice I can give you is just to accept it. And that doesn't mean you accept people's bad behavior towards you. It just means you accept that people are people and they will react however they will react. There really is not a whole lot you can do about it. Now, for every person that accepts you as you, there will be somebody who doesn't. And that's just how it is. And you will almost always have no control over it. Just accept that both native people and non-native people will look at you and form judgments about you based upon your appearance. They may be good judgments and they may be bad judgments, but either way, you have very little control over it. And that is part of life. People are people. So just accept it. But you don't have to accept their bad treatment of you. You were born native and you'll die native. And everything in the middle is just details. So live your life how you want to live it and stop worrying about what everyone else's judgment of you will be. Their judgment is their problem. It only becomes your problem when they start to treat you badly. Otherwise, it does you no harm if they walk through their life with a heart full of bad feelings. So let them. This past fall, I went to a ceremony, and afterwards there was this little feast. And after everyone had gone through the line, I stepped up to get a little plate of food, and I found myself talking to this dark-skinned guy from Milwaukee. And I introduced myself, and he did the same. And then he goes, "I was trying to figure out who you were." And of course, I knew exactly what he meant, because I've heard stuff like this my whole life, right? So I accept that I always will hear stuff like this my whole life. Does it suck? Yes. But that is life. Did he treat me badly? No. He just subtly checked my identity. Now, when I was an undergraduate, I was in the Wunshik office, which is the American Indian Student Group on the University of Wisconsin-Madison campus. So I was with my mentor, Rick Cliff, and I was probably a junior or senior at the time. There was this one new native girl on campus there that was there, and all I remember about her was she was pretty light-skinned, and I think we were at a meeting, but it could have been some other kind of event, but it just ended. And Rick mentored lots of people there, or lots of younger students, and I was the only one that really followed him around like a lost puppy dog. But the meeting was ending and people were leaving, and she and Rick just happened to be chit-chatting at the end there while she was packing up her stuff. And so Cliff said, asked her what she liked to do for fun and stuff like that, and she said something about video games and movies and stuff. Now, Rick Cliff grew up on the Fort Belknap Reservation in a one-room log cabin with a dirt floor, no electricity, and no running water. So he said to this girl, when I grew up for fun, we used to watch dogs chase cars. So I busted up laughing, and because it's so different from the reality that she grew up, and I'm sure she couldn't even fathom that. A little bit later, after she had just left, Rick turned to me and he said, "When someone comes to me and tells me that they're native, I take their word for it, because the Creator didn't put me on this earth to judge other people." And I thought that's a very enlightened view, and very open and accepting. But many people in Indian country are not like that. And many people in this world are not like that. And people are people. There was a stretch in my early 30s when I kept hearing a bunch of elders say to me that you need to see like a blind man. Now, maybe that was a saying that just happened to be going around Indian country at the time. I don't know. But like all native wisdom, they would say something like this to me, and that's all they would say. And then I would relentlessly think about it until I solved this riddle. So one day, I went into an Inipi or a sweat lodge, and I saw like a blind man, right? Because it's pitch dark in there. So when it's pitch dark, we see people for who they are inside a sweat lodge. And it teaches you to see like a blind man. So you're going to have to decide how you're going to walk through this life. Some people don't see like a blind man, and they truly believe the Creator did in fact put them on this earth to judge every single person around them. And that's them. It doesn't have to be you. I'm at the point in my life that, using Dr. Anton Truer's 5 categories, the only categories I think that really matter are cultural, linguistic, and a 6th definition that I will reveal shortly. For many people in Indian country, the political definition or enrollment in a tribe is a very big deal, and it matters a lot. I've met natives that as soon as we shook hands, they've handed me a tribal ID, or they put it down on a table. And I wonder why. Why did they feel the need to prove they're native to me? Or why do they think a piece of plastic would do that? For your next generation, if you are trying to find your native identity, if you're trying to figure out who you are or how you fit into the circle, and you truly believe that enrollment in a plastic tribal ID card will help you do that, then I say go for it. I say go get it. I'm not saying you shouldn't be enrolled. I'm just saying that your identity should not be a piece of paper or a plastic card. Out of everything that defines who you are in this life, that is the least important, in my opinion. However, if you are looking to get enrolled in a tribe to get benefits, then you need to find another reason to get enrolled, because that is definitely the wrong answer. Very shortly, I'm going to make a case against looking for benefits and resources from tribes. For other people, the biological definition is extremely important. If your skin isn't brown as theirs, they consider you less native, or any other number of racial terms, right? Some still cling to a blood quantum percentage and talk about themselves being full-blooded or you being half-blooded or less, right? But even that is extremely hard to come by these days. So if you are not born very dark, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to go to a tanning booth every day so you can feel validated by these people? Dark or light, you will face your own set of challenges. Now, young or old alike, we often feel guilty or ashamed or have low self-esteem for not knowing stuff or being light-skinned or growing up off-res. You can't help how you were born, so you shouldn't feel bad about it. Now, Hollywood and social media isn't doing you any favors. Since the 1950s, 70% of natives don't live on reservations. And for the past 30 plus years, Native Americans are marrying outside of their ethnicity at a rate of over 75%. The face of Indian country is getting lighter, or it's getting mixed with other ethnicities. Right now we're seeing enrolled natives, your peers, that are looking black or Asian or Hispanic or white with blonde hair, blue eyes, or red hair. Yet every native movie and TV show shows us back in the day slinging arrows at people, or dark-skinned, classically looking natives living on the res. Right? So I'm not trying to bash reservation life at all. I'm just pointing out that that's not reality. It is for some, but not for 70% of us. All of us are disconnected natives. We're all cut off from our culture, not knowing our language, and not knowing our traditional ways. We're all born surrounded by this mainstream dominant culture that none of us fit into. With all this research and thinking and praying and smudging, I think the heart of Native identity issue for my generation truly lies in the political definition. And I'm not talking about asking people if they're enrolled or not, or can they flash a tribal ID or not. To me, the real issue of Native identity is asking what's behind the politics. Politics was brought to Turtle Island the same as the idea of government was brought here. What's behind all of that is dollars. The idea of money is a foreign concept to the indigenous way of thinking. Would 90% of these current identity talks even be happening if money wasn't part of the same conversation? From using fake tribal IDs to get cheaper gas at tribal gas stations to discussions about per capita payments and blood quantum percentages, it all comes down to money. Excuse me. Transforming a tribal mind into a civilized mind, or turning native people into takers, is the crowning jewel of colonization. The only reason to feel ashamed or guilty or have low self-esteem is if you are putting other people down to lift yourself up. You can't help how you were born, but you can always learn, and it's never too late to go back to the blanket. I know a tribal chairman that started learning his language from CDs, and now he's one of the best speakers of his generation in his tribe. Never let anyone make you feel bad for trying to connect, and reconnect to your culture and your language however you can. When I said I thought linguistic and cultural definitions are what mattered the most alongside a sixth definition, I didn't mean that knowing your language and practicing traditional ways makes you better or more native than anyone else. What I meant was these things are what will save your generation and future generations. I was obsessive about studying my traditional ways because the more I studied them, the more beauty I saw inside of them, and the more I loved them. So to me, this is the only reason to learn your language and study traditional ways. You do it because you love it with all your heart. So using Dr. Anton Chur's 5 categorical definitions, we can vaguely piece together an idea of how to develop a native identity. But no one has the answer. So for you young ones, I can't tell you how to develop your own native identity, and no one can. But I did promise that I can tell you how to develop a great one. And so, to Dr. Anton Chur's thoughtful collection, I will add a 6th category, and I call that the sacrifice definition. Now, the sacrifice definition is your native identity is defined by how much you give to your people, how much you sacrifice, how much you put others before yourself. When I look around my state at all the people I grew up with, all the leaders of today, all the elders that I respect and admire, and all the people that are the bedrock of their tribal communities, this is who they are. This is what they do. They are people who give and sacrifice for their people, all Native people, and even non-Native people. When I said before that young Natives should not be seeking benefits from a tribe, this is exactly what I meant. You should be seeking how you can give to make your tribe stronger, any tribe stronger, all tribes stronger. I chose the word sacrifice for a very specific reason. It comes from the Latin meaning to make sacred. When I look around me, this is what the greatest Native people I know do. I can point to a few mean, nasty Native people in Indian country, but I can show you an entire state of great Native people. And that's why they are the 5th why on my list. And this is why I work so hard to honor them every single day. And I try to be worthy of standing next to those people, and I can never sacrifice enough for them. Now, traditionally from birth, Native children were raised to be givers. That doesn't mean that Indigenous people were never selfish, because people are people. But our traditional stories teach us the dangers of being a taker. Compared to now, takers in tribal societies were few and far between. We also lived in family groups or clans. So taking meant we were stealing from our own family. In today's society, taking is a cultural aspiration and obsession. The individual strives to take all they can until they are sitting on the throne all by themselves and governing over everyone else. Prior to colonization, in tribal societies, takers were the outliers. This is why the trickster in our traditional stories embodies the taker. He teaches us what not to do. Now, I sometimes joke that what would happen if some tribes, instead of giving payouts, they started charging membership fees. And half the people I say this to laugh and half get really serious. So is tribal membership about giving or is it about taking? A reporter asked Sitting Bull why his people loved and respected him so much. And Sitting Bull asked the reporter if it was true that white men were respected because they had many houses and many horses. And the reporter said it was true. Sitting Bull said he was loved and respected because he kept nothing for himself. So are you a giver or are you a taker? For you non-natives, if you adopt the sacrifice definition, it will transform your life. Live your life as a giver to every single person around you, to the earth and all things of the earth, from the greatest of the great to the smallest of the small, and to the entire cosmos. I guarantee you will live a magical life. Now, for you next generation, what I'm about to say is going to be far easier said than done. But I want you to hear me loud and clear. You do not need to prove you are native to anyone on this planet. The only person you have to prove it to is yourself. When you are secure in who you are, you don't need to prove nothing to nobody. If you are nervous and edgy and hesitant about still trying to figure out your native identity or wanting to connect to your culture, don't be nervous. The vast majority of natives out there fit that sacrifice definition. They put others and their tribe before themselves. They are selfless, compassionate, caring, and loving people. There are many native grandmas and grandpas, aunties and uncles out there who would love to pass on their wisdom to a younger generation willing to listen and learn. And why can't that be you? Stand strong, young ones, and give with all your heart. Ho matakiase.